So some good news to start. Everybody in the front row who doesn't work for Don't Panic win. Oh, sorry. Nobody ever sits in the front. So I'm Simon Heseltine. I'm the VP of Search for ForRent.com. You've never heard of us, unless you happen to live in the States. We are basically a lead generation site for apartments in the US, working with lots of different LGMs. So I'm talking about the future, and I've put these in here just basically so I can actually expense them to my company now, because they were expensive, meeting Capaldi. But I work in Norfolk, Virginia, which is down in the southern tip of Virginia, just above North Carolina. I've been in the States for 25 years now. I actually grew up just down the road in Hadfield, Derbyshire. So what are we trying to do at For Rent? What are our goals around SEO? The first one that we have is that we're trying to attract people. People who don't necessarily have an idea of who they should go to when they're looking for a new apartment. They're looking for somewhere to live. So naturally, they're going to go to Google, they're going to do a search, they're going to look for apartments in Seattle, they're going to look for 2-bedroom apartments in Tacoma. We want to be showing up there for them. We want to be presenting the best face forward. And we have some competitors who have very deep pockets. Apartments.com, I mean, they're doing Super Bowl ads. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. We had a free bar. They were giving away a Tesla and 50 grand. Little difference. So we've got to make sure that we're out there, we're actually engaging with folks as well. I mean, we want to make sure that we're actually engaged with them. That we're showing them what they want to find. We're hitting them at the right point of the life cycle, the apartment hunter's life cycle. And then our goal is to get them to actually convert. We want them to find what it is they're looking for. We want them to find a place to live. And then, of course, we want to try and actually retain them. We know full well that when somebody actually signs a lease, that in 9 months, a year and 9 months, 2 years and 9 months, they're probably going to start looking for somewhere else to live. Or when they switch their jobs, 40% of people who are searching for an apartment on our site are doing so from outside the city they're searching in. So they're looking to relocate to other cities. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. Well, as we all know, SEO is dead. And we know that SEO is dead because people won't stop writing articles about how SEO is dead. I wish they would, but they don't. We've got the Grim Reaper. Sure sign that SEO is dead. Even Bing came out and wrote a post about SEO being dead. This is from 3 years ago. Is there anybody here who still gets some traffic organically? Everybody. So it's just a misnomer that SEO is dead. But even if we take it on that face value, we've at least still got PPC. Unless, of course, people are writing articles about PPC being dead, which, of course, they are. So it's really fun being a digital marketer these days, isn't it? When everything's gone. Well, of course, we know that that's not the case. We know that PPC and SEO are still out there. So, brief history of search. Who knows what the first search engine was? Not many people know it was Archie. That was the first search engine. And then, of course, we had all these others that popped up that we've all used over time. In 2000, this was what the search industry looked like, the search engine industry looked like. This is everybody who had at least 1% of the market share in the US. So you can see it's all over the place. It's very incestuous. Everybody is passing data to everybody else. Of course, these days, there's only really the two crawlers in the US, Bing and Google. And Google's market share, according to Hitwise, is over 90%. ComScore, I think it's still somewhere around the 75% mark. And I know that in the UK, it's around that same mark as well. Google's around that 90% mark. So of course, when we think about things, we just think about Google. We think about how things look on Google, how we look on Google, how people are searching on Google, how the Google algorithm works. We don't tend to care about what Bing does in most cases, although I'll touch a little bit on that later. So what does Google think about SEO? Well, if you do a search on Google, you just type in SEO is, this is what you get. SEO is dead, SEO is BS, SEO is killing America. And you thought that was just our elections. At least we've got SEO is the awesome in there. But of course, this is how people are searching online. That's how Google fills these out. They're going and they're looking at how people are searching based on that query volume over a certain length of time. They start throwing them in here. But what really is SEO? SEO is a powerful traffic driver for most brands. Every site I have worked on, with the exception of Huffington Post Korea, SEO has been somewhere in that 20 to 50% mark of traffic coming in. HuffPost Korea, that was back when I worked for AOL for several years. They're a huge social media country, so they've just got a heck of a lot of traffic from social over there. But everywhere else, SEO is still exceptionally important. And the reason we see all these articles about SEO being dead is because what we did in 2003 is not the same we did in 2009. It's not the same as what we do now. SEO is constantly evolving. Google used to put out, well, they did it, I think, for 2013 and 2014. They put out numbers of how many algorithm changes they had that year. I think in 2013 it was 700 and something, 2014 it was 800 and something. In March of this year, Gary Illish, who I'm sure most of you know, the mouthpiece of Google, was asked, was there an update yesterday on March 9th? And his response was, we do about 3 a day, so 1,000 a year. Google's doing over 1,000 updates a year. And of course, we don't know most of those. And we don't actually care about most of them. Some of them are on different industries. Some of them are on different types of content. Some of them are just fiddling with the numbers a little bit on some little thing. If you were in the last presentation, when he was talking about the H tags, there's a very famous one from 2007 where a Google engineer, Adam Lasnik, was presenting at SMX Stockholm. And he basically said, oh, H tags don't matter anymore. We've changed that in the algorithm. Then about a week later, he was presenting in, I think, Munich. And he said, actually, I was misquoted. We've downplayed H tags. But if you actually still go and try and do things with your H tags, it actually works when you get the hierarchy right and you put your keywords in there. It still works. But it's all part of testing. But it's this evolution. It's this movement. It's Google changing things. And they're constantly doing that. Google wants to make sure that they are the most relevant search engine for your query. If you search and you don't find what you want, eventually you're going to say, maybe I'll give Bing a go. Maybe I'll try DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo has been growing, surprisingly. So they want to make sure that they are providing a relevant result for you, which messes with people in the SEO industry, unfortunately. And Google's done all these updates over the years. I mean, we've had Florida, we've had the pandas, the penguins. RankBrain was the one from, it's coming close, well, they announced it in October of 2015. But in October of 2015, they announced, we did this in April of 2015. Nobody really actually noticed it in April. But of course, as soon as they announced it in October, there were a bunch of SEOs going, oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I knew that had happened. They hadn't seen that. They hadn't really noticed it. They didn't really know exactly what was going on. But it's really just, again, getting to this whole, the algorithm is constantly in flux. It's constantly changing. It's constantly moving. You've got to keep making sure that you try different things. Because what happened last week may not work next week. And now I have the obligatory Bill Gates slide, because everybody has to have content is king in their deck at some point. So I've got that there. But why do I have this here? I mean, this is 1996. When Google announced RankBrain, they came out and said, this is the third most important part of the algorithm. So SEO said, oh, is it? The third? What's number 1 and 2? And Google said, oh, we can't tell you, we can't tell you. No, go on, tell us. I said, oh, okay. Content is a top 2, and links is the other one. Well, it makes sense that even though they said that content is a top 2, content's number 1. If you don't have any content, it doesn't matter how many links you've got coming in. You're not going to get, they're not going to rank you for anything. They can't contextually understand what your content is. Links are important, but you can rank without links in non-competitive keywords. So this is an example of our site. This is one of our listing pages. You can see it's just, 52 apartments in East Arizona. It's just a list. There's nothing there, really. If you're looking for an apartment in that area, you can filter it. You can look for different bathrooms, different bedrooms. You can get all that there, but it's not answering any of the questions. If you were in the SEM Rush presentation that was in here earlier, they were talking about answering the questions that your users are looking for, that people are actually actively looking for. So we did that. We said, what are they looking for? They're looking for the cost of living. They're looking for information about that neighborhood. As I mentioned, 40% of people that are searching on our site are not in that area. When I moved down to Norfolk in Virginia, I thought Ghent was in Belgium and I thought Chelsea was in London. They're both areas of Norfolk, Virginia. I actually live in Ghent. I had no clue. And without this information out there, people, they've got to go to other sites. They've got to read up on those local sites to find out what the information is. So we said, okay, here's what they want to know. How can we address these questions? How can we give them that information? How can we give them good content? How can we bring people in at the top of the funnel when they're looking for this information? So we started building these moving to and living in pages for every locality in the US, or at least the major metros. And we answered those questions. We gave them the cost of living. We gave them professional sports teams, although I still have to get them to add the MLS because my team doesn't think that football's a real sport. They asked for things like, things to see and do in Miami. We're getting all that information out there, but we're also doing the other types of content. We've got our blog out there. And our blog, we've got that for 3 reasons. Links, and engagement. And I do links twice because one is internal links. We want to make sure that we are getting the internal links coming, because again, that's still important. Making sure that's all flowing through the site, that the crawler can get to everything that we want it to, that we can get those contextual relevant links throughout the site. And then the external links. We get, some of our stuff is picked up by BuzzFeed, by HuffPost. So we do pretty well with that. And then the engagement. Again, getting back to that, we know that people are going to be looking for an apartment again at some point in the future, most likely. So we want to make sure that our brand is out there, that they remember us. Something flowery like 5 helpful kitchen items you need now is not going to get someone to sign a lease. But it's going to be something that they might want to share, that they might want to look at, and they get to see our brand. They get to know exactly what's going on. And they get to remember who we are. Now, when you look at the SERPs, we all know these have changed over the years. It used to be that you would go to your airline when you wanted to find out what was going on with your flight. Yeah, you can still do that through the app now. But you just enter it into Google, and there's your answer. In fact, I have had it where my flight has shown up with the right gate in Google before it showed up in the United app. It's kind of scary, especially if you were answering those queries, if your site was looking to answer those kind of queries. One that happened last year with the lyrics sites. Once those lyrics started coming up directly in Google, all those lyrics sites, their traffic just went like that. There's no need for people to go down and click through when it's all there directly in the SERPs. Although I was surprised it didn't ask if I wanted the Lionel Richie hello as well. You've got the places. That's all showing up in here now. And it's pushing the organic results further and further down. This isn't new. I mean, this has been happening since universal search came about in June 2007. But they keep refining, they keep moving things around, they keep throwing carousels up, taking them down, moving things around. It's constant changes. They're trying to figure out exactly what works for people, what gets the clicks coming through. They don't always get it right, though. This is a one box for one of our competitors. My team, when I first got there, they're like, we can't figure out what this is or where it's coming from. I looked at it, it's a calendar. There's 7 days between each one. That's Sunday, Monday, and Saturday from their moving calendar. Google, for some reason, thought that that was very important to show in the SERPs, in 0 position. It's absolute garbage. They have now started to pull that back, and there are better results going up there. We're getting some of them, and our other competitors are getting some as well. But Google does not always get it right. Now, if we go back to PPC, I mean, we see that there is growth there. I mean, you can see that there is more spend happening on the paid side, especially on mobile. And we all know that mobile is something that's growing and mobile is something that's important. When you look at the spend that's happening, I mean, Google's still going up. From 2015 to 2016, 20% growth in spend. Facebook even more. So what do we do with PPC? I mean, we actually started working with an agency. Jellyfish is our agency we're working with. And we sat down and we talked about what do we need to do? How do we need to get this right? So we sat down and we walked through what we'd done so far. We got the PPC campaigns optimized. We figured out exactly what needed to do to get them that little bit better. And we kept going through that, we kept refining, we kept improving. And we've got to the point for this year where we're looking more at that automated side of things. We're looking at what are the better ways to serve our content. How can we get better use out of our dollars? How can we get more leads? And that's pretty much what we've been doing. I mean, we've been using things like the dynamic search ads. We've been using the age and gender bidding. And you can see we've had some good results with these. We went through the remarketing list for search ads. You know, saved us 359,000, and we had a 50% uplift in leads from using those ads. So I mean, there's all this more sophisticated stuff that's out there than back when I started doing PPC in 2005. And it was basically, to optimize it, you put the keywords in and maybe threw some negative keywords in, and you had the 25 characters, the 35 characters, the 35 characters, that was it. It's a lot more sophisticated these days, and it's going to continue to go in that manner. So let's talk about mobile. Talk about mobile phones, how they're growing, and why that's important. As I mentioned, Gary Illish, I'm sure most of you know who Gary is. Gary, he's out in Geneva. I think he sits near John Mueller, who was in some of the earlier presentations. Gary posted this on his Facebook, and he told me it was okay to use it in presentations, so I have been using the hell out of it. He talked about the mobile journey as far as Google is concerned. So if you look at 2011, what did Google think about mobile? You know, hey, you should start getting on this. 2012. It's getting even bigger. You know, keep going. There's growth there. There's legs on this thing. 2013. You know, you really should be doing this. You've got to get it going. And 2014, you must go mobile. December 2014 was when Google announced that they were going to be doing a mobile-friendly update on April the 19th the following year. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. And SEOs, being a very calm, measured group of people, called that Mobile-geddon. But what really happened in those 4.5 months is that people had time to get their sites ready, to fix the issues that they had, to make them more mobile-friendly, to remove the potential for fat fingering on the phone. And when that rolled around, it was more of a whimper than anything else. But why did Google do that at that point? Well, the reason they did that was because in January of 2015, that's when Google announced more than 50% of searches to google.com came from mobile devices. And that's something that never turned around again. 2016, if you're not doing mobile, if you haven't got a mobile strategy ready, why? And at the end of 2016, at PubCon in Vegas, on October the 8th, Gary announced Google will be going to a mobile-first index. And he did say it will be going by the end of the year. They've refined that to Q1 of this year, then Q3 of this year, now Q1 and Q2 of next year. But it will happen at some point. They're going to move to that mobile-first index. And if your site isn't ready for mobile-first, if your site doesn't work well on mobile devices, if you don't have all the components on the mobile version of your site, if you don't have a responsive site, you've got 6 months to get that sorted out. Because you need to get there. You need to have that happen. We know how many people are on mobile devices now. We're actually hitting a saturation point. We're getting, 58% of people around the world are on mobile devices. The growth has slowed down dramatically. But you can see the amount of hours that people are spending on mobile devices is continuing to grow. On desktop devices, it's either stagnant or falling. And that is not going to change. So you need to make sure that you are, again, on the mobile side of things. This is from almost a year ago now. 60% of traffic to sites is coming from mobile devices. That number continues to grow. And again, all growth is coming from mobile. It's not coming from desktop. I think I've hammered that point home enough now. Our mobile traffic for last month, about 2/3. 2/3 of our traffic came from mobile devices. And we're seeing that growing. We're thinking by the end of the year, we're going to be close to about 69, 70% of our traffic will be mobile. And then when mobile first happens, we're hoping we're going to see a much bigger jump because we're ready for it. We've been doing this move. We went to responsive. I'm sure most people in this room know what a responsive site is. But we had multiple code bases. We had m.forrent.com. We had www. Now we have the responsive site. So regardless of whatever device you're watching it on, regardless of whatever orientation you're using on that device, you are getting the same view, just different, just rearranged in that gridded format. So that was good for us. We went down from those 2 code bases to that 1 code base. Then we went up to 2 code bases because we had to do AMP. Now, when AMP first came out, I was working with HuffPost. I was working on a lot of news sites. And it made sense for those sites. You wanted to be in AMP. You wanted to be in the AMP carousel on the mobile devices. For those who don't know what AMP is, accelerated mobile pages, it's just basically a really super fast way of loading those pages. But it takes a little bit of coding to put that there. Not everything is supported that would be supported on your regular site. And you will see it with that little AMP logo, which you can see over here. Although Google is actually currently testing making that AMP logo black, so it will stand out a little bit more. As I say, when it first came out, it was more towards the newsy side of things. But you now do see a lot of e-com sites have gone that way. So eBay, Pinterest, they are serving everything on AMP. We put our profile pages on AMP. So all our profiles of our different apartment complexes, different apartment communities. We've actually seen a nice little jump in conversion. Not a huge jump, but a nice little jump in conversion on our AMP pages. And we're the only ones in our industry who have implemented anything AMP-wise. So it's cool to actually be at the forefront of something. So let's talk about things in general. I mean, when you put everything together. I mean, you've got a website. It's there. It might not look the best. You start putting your SEO and your PPC together on that, and it starts to look a little bit better, but it's when you pull everything together. You've got to get everything working together. Then it starts to look so much better. I mean, your SEO has to be involved with your design phase. You have to be involved with your paid search, with your social team. I am the VP of Search. I have SEO underneath me. I have paid search underneath me. I have content underneath me. We work very closely with the social team. We work very closely with the email marketing team. It all has to play together. We have to have that unified strategy. We work very closely with the dev team. We work very closely with the product teams. It's not isolated. I mean, when you look at everything that a digital marketing team does these days, there is a crap ton that we do. It's not just doing keyword research. It's working on audits. It's troubleshooting. It's looking to see what's happening in the industry. And that's just not what's reported on Search Engine Roundtable or Search Engine Land or Search Engine Journal or anything else with search engine at the beginning. It's reading through private groups on Facebook, talking to our peers at other companies to see what they're seeing. It's finding out really what's going on in the industry and then disseminating that information where it really should be within our organization. It's training and general evangelism. When I was at AOL, I actually set up a training program for everyone. I didn't just train editors. I didn't just train product managers or the dev team. I trained the business development team, but only on what they needed to know. That they needed to know when they were putting contracts together with partners, what did they need to ask for when we were doing any kind of content swap, when we were doing any kind of syndication. I would have our HR team trained because they need to know what to ask. I would train other teams within the company, the legal team, because they need to know enough to know when they need to come to my team and talk to my team about something in that sphere. And the general evangelism, you saw from that early slide about SEO is. What a bad rap SEO has. There are still people out there who think that SEO is snake oil, that SEO is scammy, that PPC is just paying for traffic. They just don't get that this is actually a valuable thing, that people are finding your site in these ways. I actually saw something the other day from a former client where they put together a document they asked me to look at, which said, well, all the content on our site is written for SEO. We want to do a version of our site that doesn't have the content on it, so it will load faster. I'm like, how are people getting to it? How do you actually expect them to get there? It doesn't make any sense. Other things that we do, I mean, strategy. Relationship building is one that you don't even think about, really, especially when you're working in-house. I was working with TechCrunch, and the editorial team at TechCrunch would have nothing to do with anybody from AOL. We owned them, but they actually had a clause put in that you weren't allowed to give them any input on editorial direction. So they didn't want to talk to anybody from AOL. So I kept going out to San Francisco every quarter. I'd sit down with the dev team, and we worked on fixing the issues that they had. We did some technical audits. We fixed those issues, and their traffic started to go up. And then finally, the editorial team came to me and said, okay, let's talk. And then we started getting that going up as well from that side. So it's just building. There was one team, I got the dev team and the design team to talk to each other because they weren't for some reason. We're working on all kinds of things. I mean, migration assistant, site launches. Heck, at AOL, I had 135 sites I was working with. They were going all over the place. So that's where things are, where things have been. Where are things going? Well, I mean, there are things like chatbots. Chatbots are a big thing. I saw a presentation yesterday by a guy from Twitter. And he was talking about all the different bots that brands are using to communicate. It was 65% of people have a one-on-one conversation with a brand on Twitter during the course of a year. And now a lot of these brands are automating that conversation. They're creating these Twitter bots, these chat bots. Bing has actually now started incorporating chatbots directly into Bing search. They're testing it in Seattle. So there's only this one out there, the Monsoon bot. But if you're in Seattle and you're looking for a restaurant, it will chat with you. It will give you suggestions as to where to go to eat based on what your preferences are. This is absolutely coming out. I mean, there are other bots that are out there. I've been playing with one, a growth bot, which somebody over at HubSpot developed. It pings me every few days on my Facebook account just to tell me what's going on, tell me all its different features it has. It can do things like some basic SEMrush queries. It's nice to see that out there. And then, of course, we have the things like the virtual assistants. So how many people in here have a Siri, Alexa, or how many people in here can raise arms? There we go. I don't know if you're aware, but the primary search engine for Siri, Cortana, and Alexa is Bing. So when we think about Google, voice search is growing dramatically. These personal assistant search is growing dramatically. And Bing is the primary one for that. Now, it's interesting. I've talked to people at Bing. I've talked to people at Google. Neither of them, as yet, have any clue how they're going to monetize voice search. Because at the moment, you're asking a question, you're getting a response back. It's usually coming back from an answer box. But how can they make money off that? Are they going to make them a subscription service at some point? So you've got to pay if you don't want ads. Or if you don't pay, then you get the ad coming up to you. And they obviously then would have to say, this is a sponsored result. Who knows? But that's something that's going to change. That's something that's going to happen at some point. Because they're going to have to realize they want to make money off this. And they're not making money off them right now, once they've sold the actual units. Of course, Google Home is just Google. The virtual assistants are not that good at the moment. You know, they don't all give you the right answers. Well, they don't give you, some of them don't give you many answers. Alexa is apparently 20% of the questions that you ask, it gives you the right answer for. I did ask Alexa, and I wish I had videotaped this so I could play it now. I asked Alexa, what is SEO? And she started telling me about some ancient Sumerian king, which I don't think is what I was looking for. And then when they do come back, they don't always give you the right answer. But this is going to improve. Over time, they're going to get this right. They're going to figure this out. And of course, you're teaching them. You're training them. They're building up a profile of you. I mean, there are other things that we have out there as well. I mean, VR and AR is going to be huge. What I am hearing about the iPhone 8, when that launches, it's going to have VR and AR built directly into it, and it's going to be potentially pushing that forward more. So if you're in something that's very visual, that's something that you might want to think about. I mean, we've looked into doing virtual apartment tours, and we've actually built some prototypes out. It hasn't worked for us yet, but that could just be because we're ahead of where things are. And give it a year, give it 2 years. That might be the standard at that point. It's looking where these things are and continue to track across with them. But talking about the interest graph, you're talking to your virtual assistants. You're searching on Google. You're searching on Facebook. You're interacting with people on Facebook. They all have your interest graph, a version of it. They know what you're doing. They know what you're looking for. Boy, I feel like I should be wearing a tin hat at this point. But they know a lot about you based on how you searched, how you behaved. I mean, heck, with some of these, you got your Alexa on, it's listening to you the whole time. Your Samsung TV is listening to you. And you'll go home and all of a sudden, you'll search on something and like, why am I getting an ad for that? I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't do any search. You'll see that popping up. And that interest graph is absolutely being used. There was a site that I used to work with called Gravity that AOL bought when I was there. And they used that. If you actually had the Gravity plugin, it would rearrange the Huffington Post homepage to show you the articles that were most relevant to what you had searched for in the past, that was in your interest graph. Now, I will say that for people who work in online marketing, especially on the agency side, you're doing all these searches for your clients, that can really screw up your interest graph. an announcement on Wednesday night. Google have now gone to Google Feed. It's launched in the US, I think, on Wednesday. It's going to launch in the UK, I believe they said in 2 to 3 weeks. But Google now is now dead. And they're going to start showing the Google Feed, which will be similar to your feed that you see in Facebook. And again, this is all based on your personalization. If you search for your football team scores, that's going to be popping up there whenever whenever something happens with your team. Unfortunately for me, I'm a Hull City fan, so it's mostly me seeing my players being sold. But it's giving you that information, and it's basing it all on everything that you have done. And that's how things are going. Things are going to be more personal. And that's how search is going to be. And again, it's not that search is dead. It's just that it is evolving. It's moving forward into this whole personal level based on your interactions. And then I'll throw another Doctor Who picture in there. So, basically, where are we? I mean, search is going to continue to evolve. Search is not dead. It's not going to die. We're still going to have jobs. They're just going to be different jobs. There are different things that we can look at, different things that we can work with. I mean, I know people who were in SEO years ago. They're now specialized in conversion rate optimization. That's an important thing. That's an important part of it. There are people that are more integrated within the UX team, people that are working more with the social team. It's all, again, part of this whole combined thing. We're all basically trying to get more traffic to our sites, more leads for our sites, or whatever your conversion event is. What we have found is that quality content still works. Getting the right content on your site, it's, ever since Panda in March of 2011, it's not been about quantity. It's been about quality. And it really, really still is. If you want to rank highly for something, if you want to rank for the terms, you've got to have that quality content out there. You just can't factory farm content and throw it up. And keep looking at what's going on. Look at what's going on within the industry. Go to conferences like this. Read about what's happening at other things that you can't get to. Google had an AMP conference in March in New York. They live streamed the entire thing. So anything you wanted to know about AMP, you could just go and sit at your desk and watch that conference from home. I think the streams are still up. You can still pull that down. So whatever it is that you're interested in, whatever it is that you're looking at, there's information out there, and you need to just make sure that you keep on top of it. But you also need to think about how your site can work with that as you're going forward. And that's everything I have. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll have a couple of questions if anyone's got one. Any questions? Should we let everyone else back up? There we go.
My mum doesn't even have a question for me.
Personalised. I should just shout from it.
Yeah, go for it.
You were saying that the search results are going to be more personalised. Do you think at some point there's going to be a pushback from people? I don't really like the idea that Google's going to pick what it sends me rather than what I've just looked for, and I might want to be a bit more random. At some point, do you think consumers are going to be like, yeah, stop picking what you show me?
Well, so the personal results that they're showing, like in the Google feed at the moment, they're not part of the actual search. They show up before you do a search. So if you're using the Google app on your iOS or using it on Android, you're going to see this feed directly below the search box before you actually type any content in there. Now, when you're doing a search on your Android phone, I mean, they've had this since KitKat, which was 2014, 2015. Whereas where the search on the Google app can pull in from any other apps on your phone, they can pull in from your email content as well. People do find it invasive, but people also find it easy as well. And it's another way that, it's another discovery mechanism, really, which could be a concern for a brand You know, I mean, it could be easy for a brand as well. I mean, if we have somebody who searched on for rent.com, and the next time they're starting to look for apartments, you know, we're popping up there in their feed for whatever reason, that's great. But conversely, if they've searched on our competitors, because I think it's something along the lines of when people are searching for an apartment, they hit at least 3 sites. So we know that the comparison shopping across, because not everybody has the same apartment complexes on there. We may not be showing up. We may be at a disadvantage right off the bat. So, yeah, it can be a challenge. But I mean, people complain about retargeting all the time. You know, how many times do you go on Facebook and see an ad for something that you bought last week? It happens all the time, and nothing gets done about it, really. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you very much, guys.